Well, for weeks now, PBS has been teasing its documentary that aired last night called Wikisecrets, an extensive look at WikiLeaks as an organization. Julian Assange, and most importantly, PFC Bradley Manning, the military analyst accused of leaking the classified documents to the organization. So did they find something new? A link between Assange and Manning? Could a publicly funded mainstream media organization give an objective and detailed look at the whole story? Unfortunately, we saw none of that. We got the picture of a young military analyst who was gay, who had been picked on for his small stature, who couldn't hold a steady job, and was troubled.
Talked a lot about his personal life, about his relationships, about his experiences in the military, about experiences back home.
Lamo says the person also contacted him via email, and they became friends on Facebook. It was Bradley Manning, intelligence analyst in Iraq.
Now, we also heard from numerous journalists and a former WikiLeaks member who talked about Julian Assange as someone with no regard for human life when he published the names of collaborators and informants. We were told that Adrian Lamo, the hacker turned informant who handed over his chats with Manning, was just trying to do the right thing. Nothing new, a lot of incrimination with no evidence, and perhaps most importantly, a failure of a journalistic organization to talk about how WikiLeaks has affected journalism, how it stirred a debate, and caused the government to do everything in its power to bring it down. Joining me from our studio in New York to discuss this is Kevin Gosztola, freelance assistant at The Nation magazine. Kevin, I want to thank you very much for joining me tonight. Now, if you were an average American that perhaps hasn't been extensively following this WikiLeaks story, and you were sitting on your couch last night and you watched this Frontline documentary, what's the message that you would have come away with?
Well, I believe that the message in this documentary is that there was this large intelligence breach, the largest perhaps in the history of the United States. It's impacted the entire world. It's put a lot of stress on our diplomats, and it looks like the PBS producers do not believe that that stress is something that is justified, that if they had done anything embarrassing, they should have to pay for it and be held accountable. And it seems that if you were watching, you would have seen, at least implicitly, it's really hinted at, and they don't do a good job of debunking it. They claim to say that Julian Assange was able to defend against it, but they're trying to, as you said in the lead, create this link between Manning and Assange, and they have people like Eric Schmidt, who is just speculating and suggesting that there is this link.
Well, one of the things that I found the most interesting is that they really go after Bradley Manning when they claim to tell his story, but it seems incriminating to me. I'm wondering if you agree with me here, because they tell you the story of this troubled young man, like I said, who couldn't hold a job, who was battling against don't ask, don't tell, and policies that he didn't like. And, you know, only maybe once or twice did we hear the word allegedly. Only David House, towards the end of this entire documentary, reminded everybody of the fact that he hasn't even been convicted of anything yet.
That's exactly correct, and you know, Greg Mitchell at The Nation pointed this out in his review, and you know, I noted this as well, which is the fact that you don't really get to see that there might have been some sort of moral values at play when Bradley Manning decided to allegedly leak the material to WikiLeaks. There's no mention of the fact that in Baghdad he was compelled when he saw information on abuse and possible war crimes, and then he thought that because he took an oath to defend the Constitution that he should leak the material because this was wrong.
But so why is that? Why would a journalistic organization do that? Why wouldn't they look at the debate over journalism here? Why wouldn't they look at what it really means to be a whistleblower? Why certain people do it? Why wouldn't they talk to people like Daniel Ellsberg and really try to uncover what might have been behind it?
Well, I think that it's a creative choice, because I can see, coming from a background in documentary production, that it complicates things to get into those complex issues. The discussion about how WikiLeaks is impacting journalism, all the little legal questions that are raised, the major stuff of whether a journalist can be prosecuted under the Espionage Act, those are really sticky issues. And the one key thing is that in order to really dig into this, you would have to be adversarial towards power. You would have to challenge the authorities. Some of these people who were in the film would have had to be asked some tough questions. And it looks like the PBS producers took the easy way out. And it's a lot easier to just talk about the criticisms that have been leveled against WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, and even Bradley Manning.
So then did PBS, you know, if you watch the mainstream media coverage of this story, you could say over the last year or so, if not even longer, did they just fall into the same boat as the rest of the mainstream media?
Yeah, I think they do. I think they didn't really dig all that deep. There's not much new in this documentary, unless you haven't been following the stories. I mean, I think that there's some information here that is good. It fulfills some sort of a public good because you are getting a presentation of the story of what is unfolded. But unfortunately, it's manipulative. I mean, at its core, Martin Smith went into this interview with Julian Assange. You can see the full interview that WikiLeaks leaked and posted on its website last night, just as the program was about to air. And at the beginning and during, you can see Martin Smith justifying why he is there and really just saying, look, I have to ask you these questions because these criticisms are out there. But then Julian Assange says, no, you don't. Why should you let the critics set the frame? But the problem for PBS and other organizations is that their status as a journalist in the whole social structure of the United States is in jeopardy if they take any sort of adversarial stance towards power.
And I think that we definitely see that a lot. If there's anybody that you wish was in this documentary that would have given it a fuller picture, because Julian Assange was the only WikiLeaks supporter in the entire thing, and that's obvious because, hey, he's the co-founder. Who do you think they should have spoken to?
Well, I think that Glenn Greenwald would have been a good choice. He actually broke a story and got an award for it, and it had to do with Bradley Manning's confinement. I also think that Amy Goodman could have been a good source to go to. I kind of question why they didn't put Daniel Ellsberg on camera for an interview. Yes, he appears in a protest at Quantico, but they don't actually get his point of view, which I think is very, it's important. I mean, he was the one who leaked the Pentagon Papers, and he has the most credibility in talking about whistleblowers and how governments will come after you. And, in his case, the trial that he faced, the charges, they fell through. The government was not able to make a case. And he's made a lot of arguments that the same thing could happen with Bradley Manning.
Yeah, and we're going to get his take on this tomorrow coming up on our show. Kevin, I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.